couple more seconds and then we will introduce everyone to everyone you already know, Marianne. I think we have almost everybody here.
Thank you for joining us. So this is our first marketing workshop of 2024. Our goal is to try to have one of these every month, assuming that there are people with questions that we can answer. And I wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about the difference between this versus like some of the webinars that we've all been attending since, 2020, when Zoom became the cool thing that all the cool kids do. For those of you who have worked with me before, who are my clients or former clients, you know that every time we get on a call, you leave with homework, right? Like you don't get off the call and be like, well, that was really a nice information session. No, I give you homework every single time. And so these workshops are different because we're going to answer some questions, but I'm going to give you relevant information. If that question applies to you, I'm going to give you some resources that you can dig into as your homework afterwards to try to learn a little bit more about the topic and hopefully get you deeper into the answers you're looking for. I think everybody here knows me, but just because I'm supposed to say this, I'm Marianne Pfeiffer. I'm the principal and founder of 108 Degrees Digital Marketing. I'm a MailChimp Pro partner. I do a lot of marketing speaking as well. And, my job today is to try to answer your questions from a strategy perspective, also from a tactical perspective, because that's what we do all day long at 108 Degrees. So with that said, I am going to hand off to Lauren to get us started on questions.
Yeah, so the first question that came through was from Dan, who had some questions about new commercial photography subscription product that he has. So Dan, I see you are on the line. Thank you so much for being here. And if you don't mind, would you mind elaborating a little bit about that question? And we'll get to the good stuff with Marianne.
Sure. First of all, hey Marianne. Been about 10 years.
Hey Dan, nice to see you.
Yeah. About a year and a half ago, I jumped back into commercial and corporate photography after a gap of about 9 years. Anyways, what I'm realizing is that my marketing issue is that I'm an industrial and corporate photographer. People don't necessarily think that the skills and their service I offer match their needs now because it's such a pigeonhole description. And realize that, everyone is in really the pain point from the customers approaching. I'm saying mid-sized manufacturers, 100 miles around, and construction companies and around 100 miles around Nashville. Their need for constant visual content is really hard to meet and hard to organize. And so I'm planning around putting a subscription plan together, basically a quarterly or a biannual. Go in, I strategically plan, we do some shoots, they get a real defined set of deliverables, try to anticipate, seasonality of their markets, and basically get their pipeline. And my approach to building this market is I'm going to go to my existing contacts and say, hey, do you have a customer of this, avatar of this kind of that has this pain point? I'm going to give away 6 shoots. Basically, I want to build 6 case studies because I need to show what this is. And then from that, once I get the 6 case studies, begin marketing this, roll it out to more customers. And one, do you think it's viable? And I'm talking about companies that may have some in-house marketing capability, no in-house production capability, may have agency relationship, may not. And anyways, and basically make it and I'm going to go to my existing database, of contact. How would you like to hand something good to one of your customers so that they can be a case study? And I figure I can incentivize that the kickstart of the case study.
Right, right. So Dan, as somebody who has seen your work and knows the quality of it, I'm going to say, why would you give away anything for free ever, right? Like you have so much skill. Okay. And the people who have worked with you know how much skill you have. I think that I understand your concept of I want to have some case studies and I need to build this specific area. But I also think you can get paid something for that, even if you do a lower cost, just so that your baseline cost is a little bit lower. I don't think for these people that are interested in this, your cost would be an obstacle. Certainly like a baseline just to cover, your time. Starting with your existing contacts, I agree. That's a great place to start because referral business is always going to be your best source of new business. That said, the people that you're talking about targeting, though, are ad agencies, marketing departments. So why don't you start reaching out directly to some of those using the case studies and using some of the photography that you already have. Now, it's not necessarily as industrial, all of it, but you do have some pieces that could be sort of cobbled
Yeah,
together.
I actually have a
into
lot. I have a lot of
Yeah.
industrial.
Yeah. So I would cobble some of that together into a, reasonable portfolio and just start putting that stuff out there to those people who are likely to have both the need and the budget, right? Like in our case, if we had a client in that space, they're going to say, well, can you just bring your iPhone out and shoot stuff? And I'd be like, well, I can, but it's not going to look very good. And it's not going to be what you're going to want for your brand. So if I have somebody like you in my back pocket, I can say, but there's this guy, Dan, I know, and he has a great intro package, right? So one of the things that we use for services for an intro package is we offer audits. We do MailChimp audits because we're very known in that space. And so people who are like, well, I don't know if I want to work with an agency. I don't know if you have what I need. I can offer an audit. It's a low cost entry level package. They learn a lot. If they're not ready to work with us yet, that's fine. They still get something good to go from. But if they are ready to move forward, they've had a little taste of how we are, how we work, and go further. So I would suggest for you thinking about putting together like a very small intro package, something that somebody could use for a website homepage, maybe a couple social media cover images, something like that, that would be light and little to get you
I
in the
actually
door
have
quick.
a small business package,
Okay.
and it's really for, the local restaurant that's
Mhm.
one, they need to buy photography once every 5 years, or
Right.
8 months, right? So
Mhm.
I do have something similar like that. I can kind of amp it up to the industrial.
I mean, I think that's a better shot because I don't want you to devalue what you do by giving too much away for free. I think if you have a price package on that, right? And then you could approach some of the people, some of those referral contacts and say, hey, this is what I have. I'll give your guys 20% off. If you refer me somebody, I'll give them 20% off because I'm trying to build a few clients that I can build a portfolio from, right? Then you're still getting fair compensated. They're seeing what your pricing is, which I think is really important to them than getting you more clients. Because if you're free now and the next time I go to work with you, you're $2,000, that's a big budgetary leap. But if you have an
Right.
intro package that's like $500, right? Oh, well, that sort of makes sense that the next step up would be somewhere more than that.
Okay, I get
Okay.
you. My intent was like, can I get, for access and referral, give someone a package, and I get where you're saying free is not good. And then they turn around, and then by the way, you can sign on for an annual plan, and
Yeah.
turn them into customers, and then also say, by the way, here's a discount you can offer one of your
Hmm.
constituents that since it was
Hmm.
you. And I figure, if I can leverage those initial 5 or 6 case studies,
Hmm.
they become customers and to generate others. But I
Yeah.
get zero starting points is not necessarily good.
Yeah, and I would start, you have a great Instagram channel. Your Instagram, though, is the diversity of your work. So maybe you start a very specific Instagram channel for this type of work. I don't, again, you're going to have to capitalize on the audience you have on the other one, but it might make sense to have a channel directly for this work because it's a visual medium and you will attract the marketing agencies and the marketing people with an Instagram profile. But, dig deep into LinkedIn. LinkedIn is
Yeah.
for you the place where they're making those
That
buying
database, for
decisions.
sure.
Yeah, so you need to just be continuously working that LinkedIn platform, like make it homework every single week to make sure you're connecting with people, posting a few things, showcasing some work, talking about work. That's really going to work best for you. The other thing to think about is, what do you use for email now? You have like Constant Contact or MailChimp or something?
So I have a Square website with
Mhm.
Squarespace email,
Okay.
which I'm not particularly thrilled with because of the design limitations.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I probably will be jumping over to MailChimp shortly, just because it was easy when I was setting up the website. It seemed
Oh, yeah.
integrated, but it's really lousy design.
Yeah. So
And
what
then
I'm
my
going to
my
suggest,
actual email
yeah.
is Google Workspace, which actually has a lot.
Right, which is fine. And for outreach, what I'd like to see you do is I'd like to see you, because B2B sales, like you're trying to get people to subscribe to a service, and some of them won't really understand that need for photography subscription because in their mind they're like, well, I just have him come out and I shoot and we're done. And when it's subscription, they don't realize the ongoing need. Restaurants maybe a little bit more, but industrial, they're going to be like, wow, we're one and done. So if you're trying to get people into a subscription product, one of the great ways to do that, to sort of ease into that is using automation so that you are building people through a journey over time, right? That, yeah, they try this first product and then you need to sort of stay in front of them constantly with it. Let them see the work that you're doing. Like, hey, this was month 1 with this company. This was month 2. This was month 3. And look at how well the photography evolved as we had more time to work together and they started to understand how the visuals could help them. So you can sort of, with your case studies, build that story in automation and it's evergreen. So you can release it like as people come into your cycle. It takes a while to convince them and this will get them through. So I'd really recommend that.
Great. And, you know,
Okay.
and I'm talking, you know, not straight up photography, but motion,
Yeah.
you know, dynamic graphics and such.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you can leverage, you know, automation to sort of help you repeat, then you don't have to redo the work over and over again, right? You just kind of run it and put people in the chain and then they start getting that constant drip of information. So, all right.
Thank you for your.
You're welcome. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back at it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm gonna go follow you on Instagram now, by the way. Marianne, the next question we have is from Matt, and I think that he is here today as well. And he had a couple questions about analyzing marketing data. So Matt, if you don't mind taking a moment to elaborate on your question, and Marianne will answer that one.
Hi, Marianne. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
And yeah, I have so much data that I'm sorting through right now and really having a tough time figuring out like what is actually useful and what is just junk because I am bogging myself down in 10 to 12 to 15 hours a week of gathering and analyzing data, and I can't keep doing that.
No, you shouldn't. That's a terrible way to spend your time. And it makes you very sad, especially in the winter time in New England when we're stuck inside anyway. So,
Exactly.
okay. So mostly email data, yes?
Yeah,
I know you
email
said-
data
yeah.
and website data, like email data and website data. For the
Okay.
most part.
Yeah, so it's really about whittling all that. And one of the big things for those of you that don't know, like in email data, you know, opens have always been our metric. Oh, you know, how many opens did you get on that campaign? Opens are garbage now, unfortunately, because since Apple Mail privacy kicked in, now everybody that uses an iPhone and uses Apple Mail, Apple is opening the mail on their servers to check for, you know, bots and spam and all this other stuff. So it's a privacy thing. So now we can't tell if an open is an open. Now that said, it doesn't mean opens can't be used at all. Opens can be used for trend data. So what I'd say in that metric, because Matt, you probably have some people in your organization who are used to looking at opens and they want that data, but then you're like, I know it's garbage, right?
Yeah.
So my advice is with opens, think about opens like we used to think about data back in the late 90s and early 2000s, where we really didn't know anything about anybody ever. And we used things to be trend data, like how is it trending? Like this, it's not that this email got a 50% open rate. It's that this email got a 50% open rate and the one before it had a 40% open rate. And then the next one got a 60% open rate so that you can start to see like where potential trends are. This topic's more interesting. That subject line was a little more inventive, right? So look at that as a trend line. Do not look at that as hard number. Okay, because if it's just a trend line, you're not going to have to dig in very deep to sort of figure it out. Don't separate out your, you know, Apple Mail people from your other people anymore. It's too hard to tell, and there's more changes happening anyway, so it's not really going to do you any good. Your click rate is still valuable data. There are going to be bots out there, and when you're working with like government organizations or larger organizations, finance, healthcare, things like that.
Yeah, we work with universities for everything.
Yeah.
So.
So sometimes you're going to see bot opens. And so my best advice against that is you still are bot clicks. So look at your typical click rate. You should know after this time what your typical click rate is on different kinds of campaigns,
Yeah,
right? And if you see a spike, right? You see a spike, that's probably a bot. That's the one you dig into. The one that has, you know, if you typically have a 4 to 5% open rate and you suddenly see a 15% open rate, dig into that email. There's bots there somewhere. You'll figure out where it is when you dig into it. That's worth digging into. But generally, you know, look at that click rate and say, that's a good piece of information, more as trend number than as hard fact. But again, you're looking for that trend of what's rising. Spam reports. This is something a lot of people don't measure. They don't even think about measuring spam reports. That's actually a really valuable number to know your unsubscribe rate and your spam report rate, because that tells you the quality of the list that you're getting in. And list quality is more indicative of results on the other end than just like general opens and clicks. So watch those numbers and use that as a KPI for list sources, right? Because you're advertising here and there, your information is being spread out in different places. List quality can be a really good measure of effectiveness for that advertising. I actually have a really good article that I'll send out with this recording that Litmus put out on 22 useful metrics with email, because there's advanced metrics you can look at, things like your read rates, your conversion rate, your revenue per email, stuff like that. But really, I think the best thing for you, try to narrow down to a few key indicators that the people who are making decisions need to know. Like if they're trying to decide what the topic should be for the next email, or what the topic should be for something, look at subject lines and relate subject lines to open rates and look at that data, right? Because subject line is whether they even were interested at all. Then look at click rates against what was in there, but narrow it down to just a few key performance indicators and only focus on those. Don't focus on everything. And when it comes to the web data, again, we're still hitting, the lack of cookies, privacy data, all this other stuff that's coming through. So you really need to look at it more as trend lines than as hard numbers. Are your people looking at hard numbers as part of the equation there?
Both trend lines and hard numbers. And so
Yeah.
but I'm trying to move away from the open rate as our number one performance metric.
Yeah. Yeah, I would lean into click rate more, because it's less data, so it's easier to parse through. And when there are bots there, it's much more obvious. So I think that one might be helpful for you.
Great.
Does that answer your question? Is there?
Yeah, and then just because I'm also just trying to weigh our marketing in our in-product marketing. Like we have pop-ups and stuff like that in our product versus email, because we backed off emails because a lot of people said you guys are sending too many emails, right? We had some of our customers saying, stop sending us every week, right? Stuff every single week, right? And so it's been balancing all of that versus in product, because they don't want too many pop-ups in there. And so, but we have all this new product and we're trying to show off, we have five new courses, whatever. So trying to show all this stuff off, but at the same time, it's like people don't want to be inundated. So trying to figure out where I can best make use of the data that I have access to, plus the messaging that I have to get out, and then what platform to put that on.
I would leverage preference management more if you can, right? Because when people are saying they're getting too much email, it's because they're getting too much email that's not relevant to what they're interested in.
Yeah.
So if you can sort of say what courses have they taken in the past and then relate those to what they might be interested in the future, or at very least, you can even have a preference that says, I only want to get email once a month. And you could have people who are like monthly email people, and people who don't care continue to email them every week, because maybe it is relevant for them and they do want to get that information. Don't assume because somebody else says it's too much. I mean, in consumer marketing, right, you'll get 15 emails from the Gap at the holiday season, like in one day, and the Gap has a lot of data to go from, right? So does Walmart, so does Amazon. These companies have tons and tons of data, and they email us multiple times a day, every single day. So there's no such thing as too much email if the user wants to receive that message. So it's more about targeting for you than volume. I know making more email is more work for you, so I don't want to tell you have to do more work. But I think segmentation could be really helpful in making maybe better use of that, and allowing the users to manage their preferences more, like putting a big manage preferences call to action at the bottom of your email, and let them pick what they care about. If they say nothing, continue to email them, because it's all probably relevant. And then, you can also behaviorally look at what have they been interested in products in the past, and sort of do some targeting that way as well with tags or something in MailChimp.
Yeah, and we changed inside of our app, our user list. So it used to be you could free text what your specialty is, and now they have to drop down, which makes it a lot easier to
Great.
So,
Yeah.
But that's really it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. I have a question from Nicole, who is not able to be here, but I know we're going to be recording the call. What are some good B2B marketing strategies that we should consider as we set up new programs?
Yes. Okay. So B2B is so different from B2C. And I think, in consumer marketing, it's we're all consumers, so we all can kind of get it. But in business, when we're buying, those of us that are in business, you don't necessarily think about how you buy. And it's really important as your sort of first step to think about how your customer will buy. What does their buyer's journey look like? Like we were just talking to Dan with the photography business in an industrial space. Somebody who wants a headshot is going to make a decision fairly quickly whether or not they want a headshot, but somebody who needs their factory photographed, it might take them a while, because not only does the factory have to be set up in the right way, what products are they putting out there, what do they want it to look like? It might take a lot longer to make that decision. So just the decision journey itself can be a lot longer, and what steps they have to take. Do they need approvals? Who do they have to go through? What do budget allocations look like? So when it comes to B2B, start with your buyer's journey. Understand who you're talking to, understand what's important to them, and understand what's important to them at different stages of their process. That's really critical. The next really important thing about B2B strategies, you need to educate and inform. You don't sell. I mean, you can sell. It's really not going to work out for you very well, because, B2B buyers, this is not usually a want to have. It's bathing suit season. You get bathing suit emails. You go, "Ooh, I want a new bathing suit." That's not what happens with commercial buying, right? Commercial buying is, we have an allocation in our budget, or we have a need, or we have to problem solve. Okay. So buyers in B2B appreciate education much more than sales pitch. So you want to teach them what you know, show them why you're an expert, help them understand that they can come to you with their questions and educate them. And that's where you're going to see a better response rate. You're going to build a relationship, a dialogue, right? And another big piece strategically is understanding the life cycle. Some things will be purchased once, some things will be purchased multiple times, some things take a year to buy, some things are bought in 4 weeks. Understand what the life cycle is so that you can understand what you're supposed to be positioning yourself to be for your prospective client at whatever time it is in their cycle, right? So there's a time where they're learning and they're trying to educate themselves. Then there's a time when they're trying to narrow their focus and decide of the different options that are out there, which one might be the right one. And then there's a point where they're looking to make decisions that may be based on budget. So having pricing information, a lot of people are very cautious about, oh, should I show prices on my website? Well, maybe you should, because if your buyer is going to be at a point in the cycle where you're not necessarily talking to them, they need to be able to reference that information and have it ready for them, or at least some basic information. So strategically, those are some important things to think about. Tactically, when we're trying to come up with how should we position B2B, things like fear of missing out, FOMO, right? That's a big behavioral tactic that we use in consumer marketing. Doesn't really work in B2B so well. Things like commitment consistency, things like social proof. Those are behavioral tactics that work very well in the social media or in the general B2B marketing space. But a lot of consumer tactics won't. So think tactically about the psychology of your buyer and use the behavioral targeting that's going to make sense for a business customer who's not necessarily a consumer. And two more pieces on that. First of all, email. I know Matt just said there's too much email. No, there's not too much email. There's not enough targeted email, right? In B2B, email is king. Email is the one thing when people open up their phone every day, you don't know if they're going to look at social media. They're probably going to ignore your text messages. They're definitely not answering their voicemail, but they are all opening email. They have to, they're required to for their jobs. So make sure you're using email strategically in a way that makes sense. So it's the right message at the right time to have the right one-to-one conversation in the inbox. Okay. And my last piece is, along with that, make sure you're leveraging LinkedIn. If you're in a B2B space, LinkedIn is the place to be. You might love TikTok. You might love Instagram. They're wonderful platforms. They're visually appealing. They're very satisfying to watch, but business deals happen on LinkedIn, not TikTok. At least for most of us right now. Maybe that'll change in the future. So more time on LinkedIn. None of us do it enough. Okay.
I have one more, but I know we're coming up on time. What do you think?
We could try to make it quick.
All right. Well, that's going to be on you. Here we go.
Okay.
We have a question from Tim about CRMs and how they're using one for the first time, and just like the basics of how many users do they need? Do they need more than one login? So on.
Okay. So in terms of setting up your CRM for the first time, we do hit this a lot because when we're working with companies that are sort of like starting to leverage marketing, they know they need a CRM. My advice for a CRM is every person who sells should have a login. So if someone is an administrator for you, they're not talking directly to the customers unless it's on behalf of a salesperson, they can probably share a login with the salesperson they work with. But generally, you want to be able to track sales individually to the sales manager. You also want to be able to pull reporting because different sales managers may sell to different types of customers or different product areas. And you want to be able to gauge your marketing effectiveness of different messages against some of those sales efforts. So it's really important that you can track those separately. Also, if you're using any cold outreach, which a lot of salespeople will use their CRM for like cold outreach methods, you know, if I'm selling and I go on vacation, I've done a whole bunch of cold outreach and the emails start to come back, I need somebody else to get in there and check on those and hit them while they're hot. And if you're using sort of like one login for everybody, you can't really tell who's replying to what, and it gets very confusing, not only internally, but also for the prospects you're trying to follow up with. So sort of segmenting those by salesperson or sales department, and everybody who sells gets their own login is usually the best way to do it. That's about as succinct as I can be.
Good job. I know we had one question come in, but I think just in the interest of time that I will share that with you, Marianne, after the call, and maybe you can address that via email.
Sure.
But other than that, I will share my screen for one more minute.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming. I know this was really quick. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you all got some good nuggets out of it that you will be able to use later. For each of the questions that we talked about, I actually have some homework. So I have some website articles you can reference. I have some books on Amazon you can take a look at, and I have some other resources. So when you get the follow-up from this call that has the recording, I'll also have all of those resources listed so you can take a look at those. If you, oh, great. Somebody said, oh, got some interesting nuggets. Fantastic. So feel free to follow up with me. Feel free to reach out. We're going to have another one of these sessions next month. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but I know Lauren does. I think it's, I want to say it's around the 20th maybe, but we'll send you information about that as well. So if you develop some questions between now and then, please feel free to send them in so we can address them at our next session. And please spread the word. If there's other people you know who could find this helpful, we would love to have them. So thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
It's great to see you all.
Thank you.
Take care.